Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrea Armeni. I am the Executive Director of Transform Finance and the convener of the Transform Finance Investor Network. And I'm delighted to invite you today for this conversation on filling the solar gap in low-income communities, where we'll be looking at the very innovative model that PosiGen has developed. We're going to try today a slightly different format from the usual, in which Aner Ben-Ami, Managing Director of Candide Group, intimately familiar with PosiGen, will be doing the usual framing, and then we'll turn it over to Tom Neihart, the CEO of PosiGen, who has very kindly agreed to join us today. Very quick update for the members of the Investor Network, and a warm welcome to them and to all the guests that are on this call today. We'll be having the next webinar on the opportunity zones under the new tax code with Franz Siegel from the U.S. Impact Investing Alliance on March 29th. We'll be exploring the potential for opportunity zones to really do something positive for undercapitalized communities and some of the risks that seem to be inherent in the model as it currently stands. So look out for an invite to that, and feel free to reach out in advance if you have any particular interest or ideas to add to that session. And lastly, Aner and I had the pleasure of doing an opening plenary at the Latin American Impact Investment Forum, where we presented an overall framework for connecting the values of Transform Finance to an impact management methodology. And we'll have a forthcoming piece soon that we'll be very excited to share with you. So with that, I will turn it over to Aner Ben-Ami, founding member of the Investor Network and Managing Director at Candide Group, who has graciously agreed to help us contextualize a little bit the needs in low-income communities and the opportunity for solar. Thank you, Aner. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. As Andrea mentioned, I'm Aner Ben-Ami. With Candide Group, we work with families and foundations and help them deploy capital in support of a sustainable and just economy. We work across asset classes, investing in funds and direct, debt and equity, and generally apply social justice or social equity lens across sectors and geographies. And so here to provide a little bit of context in terms of how we look at the clean energy sector, what do we mean by applying a social equity lens to that sector, and how we see PosiGen fitting into that landscape. When we look at clean energy and clean energy in the U.S., what do we mean by applying a social equity lens, or what some people refer to as a just transition framework? Essentially, we sort of start from the premise that the transition to a clean energy economy is sort of underway. It's happening. It will continue to accelerate. And when a massive transition like this one occurs, it obviously creates tons of economic opportunities for new companies and investors to generate wealth. And it also creates a lot of economic displacement on the other hand. So we essentially try to ask the question and look at who is benefiting from that transition, who's being left behind. And you could broadly think of sort of three stakeholders, three groups: customers, workers, and investors or asset owners. On the customer side, we look at who is benefiting from the economic savings from associated with going solar, and is it just homeowners? Is it just customers with really high FICO scores, or are we reaching more marginalized or lower income communities? On the workers side, obviously with this transition, there's a huge jobs story that we like to, as a solar industry, likes to obviously talk about. And over the last, there's a data point here, over the last 5 years, the solar industry jobs have grown by 16% per year, or 9 times faster than the U.S. economy as a whole. So a great job story, but again, we kind of look at, well, where are those jobs going? Are they equitably distributed? Are they all going to certain parts of the country? Are they quality jobs that offer, real opportunities to generate wealth and asset ownership? Kind of the second piece we look at. And then on the investor side, this is as an asset class, solar and clean energy in general, as an investable asset class that is lucrative for asset owners. Are there opportunities there for communities to participate in the financial gains associated with these projects? This is another lens that we've taken over the years. And so looking at kind of the state of the industry now, and so how are we sort of doing in terms of inclusion and democratizing access or the kind of the benefits of this energy transition? The story's not great, right, to be honest. So in terms of on the customer side, if you look at the fact that about 40% of U.S. households earn less than $40,000 a year, but they account for less than 5% of the solar installations in the country, right? So disproportionately, solar systems are being installed with more affluent customers and households, and are not reaching families that earn less than $50,000 or $40,000 a year. And that's sort of particularly a shame, because if you think about who needs those savings and who would benefit most from the savings associated from going solar, not surprisingly, it would be those lower income families. So when you consider the energy burden or the percent of a family's income that goes towards paying the utility bills on average, or I think the median low income household across the country spends about 5% of their household income on utilities, versus less than 2% for a non-LMI household. And this chart here on the slide, for those of you seeing the slide, shows those numbers for the 4 metro areas with the highest energy burden in the country. So I mentioned the median across the country is about 5% of household income for lower income family that goes towards utilities. In some metro areas, it's more than 10. It's north of 10%. And on this list here, number 4 on the list is New Orleans, which obviously is a market, as you'll hear about, where PosiGen is very active. So the median low income household in New Orleans spends about 10% of their income on utility bills. And so obviously the benefit of going solar would be that much more meaningful to those households. And so why, if you wonder, why has the industry not done better reaching those, a better job reaching those households? It's generally kind of 2 barriers, right? Homeownership and credit scores. So homeownership, for obvious reasons, residential solar systems are not accessible unless you own your home, and which obviously disproportionately impacts lower income households. I think the stats are that about 50% of families earning less than $40,000 a year are renters, versus 20% with non-LMI households. So that's 50% of that market that is excluded from the residential solar market, just by virtue of not being homeowners. But even within homeowners, for homeowners, many are still being excluded because of sort of the way that residential systems are sold and or financed, right? And financing solar loans and solar leases are really only being offered to customers with very high FICO scores. The chart here on this page shows the 10 solar securitizations for solar loans and leases, and the average FICO scores associated with each of those. And so the lowest average FICO score here was 728, and it goes all the way up to north of 760 FICO score in some cases, and I believe the minimum threshold for pretty much all the lenders or lease providers in the residential solar space is 680 or 670, I believe, is the floor under which you just wouldn't qualify for financing for a solar system. And then switching gears and looking at the kind of the job side of the story. So again, great story for the industry. There's more than 250,000 people working in the solar industry in the U.S. But as we look at how those jobs are distributed across the country, and we see that they are fairly concentrated in kind of the large active solar markets. And this chart looks at data from the Solar Foundation. It's the ratio of solar workers to the total workforce in every state. So what that means is in California, one end of the spectrum, there's a solar worker in the state for every 200 people or 198 people in the overall workforce in California. On the opposite end of the spectrum, if you look at a state like West Virginia, there's a solar worker for every 2,219 people in the workforce. So obviously those, some of those states that have been most affected or hurt by the energy transition, as a former coal state or coal state like West Virginia is, they're generally not the ones that are seeing the growth on the benefit on the job side either. And this next slide kind of looks at that data from in a slightly different way, but again, if you look at the total solar workforce in the U.S., 260,000 people, 40% of those are, or almost 40% of those are in California, right? And so certainly not very equitably distributed across the country. So then switching gears to some of the solutions, right? Well, how do we spread those benefits more equitably? Community solar is a strategy that some of us are very excited about. Obviously, with community or shared solar strategies, because the system is not going on a rooftop. It can be sold to non-homeowners, to renters. Theoretically, it could be sold to lower income households because, if the customer is not paying, is not current on their community solar payments, they can be pretty easily swapped, right? You don't have to go in and take out the system. You just swap a non-paying customer with a new one, and it should make for a better system or a more bankable way to serve lower income households, and that market is really taking off. There's, I believe, about 3 gigawatts under development. The estimates are it's going to be a 500 megawatt a year market as of next year. So really exciting big market. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is that it has not been very inclusive. Is not yet really showing signs of being very inclusive. Most of these projects are being built around a large commercial anchor, and in fact, most of the projects don't really even focus around residential customers at all, much less around specifically lower income customers. And what we've heard from a couple of developers is, to the extent that they are trying to serve more low-income households, the financiers, the project financiers, the project investors are discounting those projects significantly, and so really disincentivizing the developers from selling systems or selling the power to lower-income households. And there are some local efforts in place across several states to try to correct that, or to incentivize more of these community solar projects going towards lower income households. There are state carve-outs in some cases, although those carve-outs generally have not had a kind of a financial incentive, and so they're sadly not being necessarily fulfilled. But there are a couple of there's a Sunshot Award, a $5 million Sunshot, a DOE award for for lower income community solar projects. But what we're seeing is, in general, I think these are incentives that are still, few and far between, and make for a fairly complicated project, right? So if you look at something like this, a recent project in Denver that the Denver Housing Authority put together with Grid Alternatives and Namaste Solar, a 2-megawatt project serving lower income households. The complexity there around navigating several incentives, the fact that it was a PPA that had to be signed with the Denver Housing Authority, I can only imagine how long that project took to put together. And so, kind of switching gears here to PosiGen before I turn it over to Tom, and in that context, what we thought was really interesting about the PosiGen model is, it's really taking the residential solar approach and redesigning the process, redesigning the business model to really align with the needs of this segment, of the LMI segment. It's business model innovation and bringing costs down to be able to serve that segment profitably and at scale. So I won't get into too much of the innovation here because Tom will get into that, but things like a standardized one-size-fits-all system design, or the way they sell through community partners and bring down customer acquisition costs, the way they pair energy efficiency with solar installations, which is pretty much unique in this industry. And then probably most radical, or maybe the most radical kind of departure from the conventional resi solar approach is they don't run a credit check, right? So they offer a lease without really relying on a FICO score or a credit check, which in turn means that they don't have access to the third-party financing that other installers can use, right? So they can't partner with the lease providers and the loan providers in the market, because all of those models are predicated on the FICO scores, as mentioned above. So that's as Tom will sort of discuss in more detail. It really means that they've had to kind of build their own alternative ecosystem, sort of full solution in-house, which then ironically means that like I referred earlier to incentives and subsidies that are helping develop projects aimed at lower income communities and households. In the case of PosiGen, if anything, what's interesting is they've had to pursue this strategy not only without subsidy, but really with a cost of capital that's quite a bit higher than what their peers in the market have access to, because they are not able to partner with those existing third-party financiers. So interesting. I mean, you would generally think that, if you're serving a model like Grid Alternatives, where you're selling solar to lower-income communities, it's a nonprofit model or it's a subsidized model. In this case, again, not only is it not subsidized, it's arguably being done with a significantly higher cost of capital in general. And then what's worth highlighting, this is it's a model that has gained quite a bit of traction. So about 12,000 systems to date. Roughly, we'd estimate they're probably a top 15 installer in the country, which is remarkable if you take into account the fact that they're really only selling in a couple of states, in Louisiana and Connecticut, and really focused on this LMI segment. So 65% of their customers have incomes under $50,000 a year, and a median FICO score of about 640, so about 100 points lower than those other systems we shared earlier with the securitized transactions. So I'll hand it over here to Tom, and just take the quick moment for the requisite disclosure, which is that even though we're here to share our support of PosiGen, none of this should be taken as individual investment advice for any individual listening to this conversation. But no further ado, I think I'll hand it over here to Tom.
Great. Thank you so much, Amir, for the context setting. Extremely insightful as always. And yes, with that, I will welcome Tom Neihard, who is the CEO of PosiGen. Tom, I've switched over the controls to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction, and of course, Andre, thank you very much for having me on the webinar. I look forward to discussing our model and talking through some of the challenges that we've had. You know, I usually start off most of these conversations with, the way we looked at the solar industry 7 years ago when we got into this business. And, what we saw was that poor people were paying taxes so rich people could have solar. That's kind of a dirty little secret of the industry, and people don't like to talk about it, but it's the truth. We went to one particular state that has a great renewable portfolio standard that is charged on every single utility bill, and we did an analysis of it. And we sat down with their green energy group and said, do you realize that the LMI community, which does not have access to solar and very limited access to the energy efficiency programs that you have, will have paid $290 million into your fund by the end of this year with almost no access whatsoever? And their first response was, have you told anybody else this? We had not, but we talked about how do you democratize solar? How do you take it to the communities that need it the most? If you take a look at where everybody's selling, as you can see in the upper left-hand picture, those of you that don't have up the webinar, nice, beautiful mansion with probably, 30 kilowatts of solar on its roof, a nice ground mount in front of its gardens, and, every salesperson's dream sale. If you look at the other two pictures on our slide here, this is the neighborhoods that we're in. We're in the neighborhoods in New Orleans and New Orleans East and Bridgeport, Connecticut, and lower income communities that solar salespeople don't call on. When you think about it, if you make $100,000 a year and you live in a nice home on the lake, you probably get 10 phone calls a week from solar companies. You probably have people knocking on your door a couple times a week trying to sell you solar. If you live in a blue-collar neighborhood or a low-income neighborhood, one of these neighborhoods pictured here, you don't have that phone call. You don't see solar salespeople in your neighborhood, and you don't see solar installations happening. And that's wrong. I mean, everybody needs access to the benefits of solar and energy efficiency. And so that's, when we started our company, it was how to democratize solar, how to bring those savings. So when we formed the company, we had 4 missions. The first mission, and of course the most important, is the point of sale. It's to have a positive financial impact into the families that we serve. The second one was to impact low-income communities by servicing enough families in that community to have a difference, to make a positive economic impact. The third was to hire the same people that we were servicing. We wanted to create jobs and career opportunities for the same customers, the same people in that social economic background. And then, of course, the fourth was to save the environment, to make a difference. And we really, every person that comes to work for PosiGen, everybody that joins the team, we spend a lot of time talking about what our mission is and how we deliver the mission. One of our favorite sayings around here is, we don't have to make every dollar, but we have to save our customer every dollar that we can. And how can we participate? How can we engage? And it's not just from the installations that we do on solar and the energy efficiency upgrades, but it's how we communicate with the customers. It's giving them tips on how to reduce their energy usage, working with them through problems, making sure that we are an energy partner and that we don't call our customers ratepayers. So when you look at the impact that we have, it's pretty dramatic. Our average customer is going to save just under $50 a month. You think about that, that may not mean a lot to the people on this phone call. And look, if you make $150,000 a year and I save you $50 a month, you probably spend it at Starbucks. But if you're a single mother with 3 kids in school that makes $30,000 a year, $50 has a tremendous impact on your monthly budget. It goes towards essentials. You're talking about buying groceries, school supplies, things that make a difference in your family. And it's also about having some type of surety, right? A little bit of energy independence people tell me all the time that the only bill that they don't know what it is before they get it is their utility bill. I had a lady that said that every time they got their utility bill, their family sat around the kitchen table and said a prayer before they opened it because it told them how much money they had to spend on essentials. We laugh about that sometimes, but think about that you have to pray before you open up a bill. That's so impactful. And the people that have talked to us about the changes they've been able to make in their lives after PosiGen. Because remember, we're selling this as a fixed flat lease payment. It doesn't go up every year as all of our competitors do. I don't know why my solar is supposed to be worth 60% more 20 years from now than it is today. We also look at what the savings profile is for each customer. We adjust our spending and increasing it in a lot of cases to get people additional savings with that energy efficiency piece. And that energy efficiency piece is truly key. When you think about it, solar is great. It's going to produce electricity. It's renewable, but it only goes so far. Reducing the consumption in the home by doing the energy efficiency work, it's invaluable. It increases the savings 30 to 80%, and in some cases, 200 and 300%. We went into a 110-year-old shotgun house here in New Orleans. They were paying $469 a month during the summer to cool the house. It was a 1,300 square foot home. Mr. Maroney was confined to a bed. His wife had disability problems. And we went in, put up the same solar system we put on everybody's house at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, got him $75 a month in savings. But when we did the energy efficiency work and we sealed up the home, where we could literally see through cracks around the windows, we found that his ductwork had 70% air leakage. We sealed that up. We did some work on the plenum, the air return. We replaced all his incandescent bulbs with LEDs. We put a programmable thermostat. We did a little bit more work than we normally would, but his utility bill went down to $50. He was still paying us the same $70 everybody else did, but now all of a sudden he had literally hundreds of dollars more in his pocket to pay for prescription drugs and the things that they needed most. So look at our customers. Our customers truly are people on fixed income, people on disability, blue-collar workers, people that would never be called upon by a normal solar company. And it makes a difference. And it's interesting when we walk in because it's always about the financial impact. How can I put $50 back in your pocket, Mrs. Customer? But then it becomes more than that. So we go through doing the energy efficiency work, and after we do all the tests, we sit down at the kitchen table and we say, look, we're going to seal the outside of your home, and that's going to make your home more healthy, right? Less spores, mold, water intrusion. It's going to make it more comfortable. It won't be drafty. It's going to increase the value of your home. It's going to save you electricity. And this is the things that we're going to do. We're going to put this sleeve over your hot water heater, and we're going to wrap these pipes, and we're putting this attic tenant, and we're building this relationship. And we found that it's not just about the money then. It becomes pride of ownership. People are very, very excited about being the first person on their block to have solar. Then they come back to us and say, how can I save more energy? We get the question all the time, how do I get off the grid? And that's not a question that somebody makes $30,000 a year or is on disability or Social Security ever felt like they could have. They always thought that saving the planet was a conversation that Brad Pitt or Jennifer Aniston had. It wasn't a conversation that Joe Smith could have. And there's excitement and there's an electricity in the community as we start building out these projects. And we're really making a difference. And I see it every day. The people here are so committed to what we do, and it really impacts us as a family. So I've got a little short video I want to play here. Andre, if you could set that up for me. Now we'll see how good all of our electronic skills are.
My name is Merry Christmas. They always get confused, whether it's Christmas time or not. I said, no, this is not a joke. My name is Merry Christmas. My husband, he goes to St. Gabriel Church, and they had a raffle. Mr. Christmas, you won the solar panels. He said, what? He said, yeah, you won the solar panels. He said, oh, go inside and tell my wife, because my wife ain't going to believe me. What's exciting about today is everybody coming in and doing their job. They changed the thermostat. They changed all my shower heads to a lower pressure, and they sealed all the cracks and crevices all around my doors and around my fireplace. Once you get all the leaks and cracks sealed, it'll make your light bill go down lower. So now with the solars, I think it'll be even lower. I think I saved my money for, I need some new windows. With the savings, I'll be able to put some money on the side for my grandson, fix up my house. We might be able to go take a trip somewhere. To put aside that kind of money for him, I think that would be beautiful. Education is the key. So that is really our goal, is to make sure that he finish school. I have one nephew that I know that would like to have it. He said, "Oh, Auntie, that's gonna be good. Your light bill gonna be real, real low." Pure positive energy means to me is saving.
You know, Merry Christmas there, tremendous customer, but she epitomizes our customer base. I mean, when you think about it, if you go to the next slide there, Andre, 40% of our customers come from customer referrals. And think about that, not just what a good job we have to do with the majority of the customers to get them to feel positive about the company, but really to be able to get 40% of them to refer customers to us, and then for those customers to act upon it. Because all we give is a $100 gift card for referrals. And, you know, most of our competitors, they have programs that spend up to $1,500 for referrals, and they still get less than 10% of their business. But, you know, when we look at it, we look at that savings number, we talk about how we can save our customers more money. We change the paradigm with our subcontractors on, you know, don't look at reducing material costs, don't look at trying to get out of the house quicker, look at increasing the amount of savings that we can get to the customer. So we literally bonus our energy efficiency subcontractors on higher levels of savings. And so when those first couple bills come in, the customers invite friends and family over to their house, and we throw up a power party. It's like a Tupperware party, but we're literally signing people up there right on the spot to get solar and energy efficiency for their homes. And that drives down our costs and again, brings that continuity into the community. And that kind of leads us to this next slide. So our New Orleans case study, the slide that's up right now, shows that we have 2,774 houses in New Orleans East that we've installed solar on. There's only 31,000 homes in New Orleans East, so we've got almost a 10% penetration. And you think about what that does in the community. And this is a specific case study that we did, that the average customer of those 2,700 customers saves $52 a month. That's net savings from their utility bill, less what they pay us. That's $40,000 a year. I'm sorry, their average income is only $40,000 a year. So you're talking about saving $600 for them. That's $144,000 a month in net savings. Economists say if a low-income or moderate-income homeowner saves money, it doesn't go into 401k, it doesn't go into stocks. It's spent locally. It's spent at the local grocery store, the local pharmacy. And so that money then generates $3.9 for every dollar that's spent. $562,000 a month is the impact that we have in this low-income community. That's over $6 million a year in economic impact, driving jobs, driving reinvestment, supporting the economy. That makes a big difference. So it's not just the family, it's the community that we impact as well, and that's very important to us. The third mission is our workforce. It's our team. We hire the same people that we do business with. And it's interesting, I had this conversation with one of our board of directors when they were down here 2 weeks ago, and we were walking through and talking to a number of our employees. Most companies give an employee discount to encourage their workforce to become customers. In our case, the people are already customers before they come to work for us. They're very excited about how much they save. They want to share that with other people. They like the feel of the company, the interaction with the company, and so they come in and apply for us, sometimes for jobs they've never done in the past. And so 60% of our workforce is people of color or protected classes, and we really pride ourselves on creating a job environment, a work environment that becomes a career. We start everybody at a living wage. So minimum wage at PosiGen is $12.50 an hour. We make sure that everyone has very good medical benefits, dental, vision, short-term, long-term disability, et cetera. We pay 75% of the cost of insurance for all of our employees and 50% for their dependents. We also have a very aggressive 401k program. We match dollar for dollar up to a certain point and then 50 cents on the dollar after that. And one of our most exciting milestones was hitting $1 million in savings for our employees and their families, which we're very excited about. And so we talk about how people come in to work for us. The girl up on the lady up on the left is Cho. She came to work for us as a front desk clerk. She decided to go into sales, became a sales team lead, decided to go over to operations, and here we are now 5 years later. She's the assistant operations manager for the entire state of Louisiana. Got a very successful career. She's a single mother, and we're really excited for her. Susan Young is probably one of the better stories that we have because it's so similar to many other of our employees. She's the youngest of 6 daughters or 6 sisters that emigrated from Jamaica. Single mother with 2 kids. She called up Solar City and tried to get solar because she had very high utility bills. They said that her income and her credit score wouldn't allow her to participate in their program. And her sister called up and said she had seen a commercial about PosiGen and that there was no credit needed and that they really were focused on helping families that needed it the most. She called us up. We went out there. We did the assessment, signed her up, and we put up her solar system. And she, too, lived in a much older home. Now, this lady was spending, $350 a month on her utility bill. We went in and did the energy efficiency work. We did the solar install. And her utility bill went from $350 down to under $100. The interesting side story to this was the inspector in Bridgeport at the time didn't believe in solar. And he told her when we were installing the system and he was going through the inspection that she was wasting her money, the solar didn't work. Well, a couple months after she started saving all that money, she walked into our front door and said, I've never been a salesperson before, but I think if I share my story with other people, I can help them, and I would like to become a salesperson for you. So we hired her, and not only did she become a very successful salesperson, eventually a team lead, and now she's our community development director, her first customer was that inspector from Bridgeport who said he didn't believe in solar, and now he's got both of his houses signed up. He doesn't give us a break on inspections, but I still think that's awfully ironic. But that's so indicative of our team. You look at Glenn Woodall. Glenn came to work for us. He had been working as a helper at another solar company, came over to work for us. We went through the training program with him. He was certified as a technician. He eventually became a tech supervisor. He moved into operations. He's now the operations manager for the entire state of Louisiana. We focus on training, on providing opportunities, on setting career paths. Even in our sales group, salespeople turn over fairly regularly. We have salespeople that have been with us 5, 6 years. We have inside salespeople, and telemarketing is tough, that have been with us 3 and 4 years. And people are really committed to the team, and people are really committed to the mission. One of our other passions, and this is not in our mission statement, but at-risk youth. So every summer we put together a at-risk youth intern program. In Louisiana, we bring in 12 at-risk youth from the surrounding area. Up in Bridgeport, we partner with the city of Bridgeport, and we're up to 40 at-risk youth that we work with up there every summer. It's a 6-week program. They spend half their time in our operations, going to accounting, going to legal, marketing, sales, inside sales, account management, monitoring, operations, spending time in all of our departments, learning about what we do. And they spend half the time out in neighborhoods, knocking on doors, talking to people about conservation, water cisterns, solar power from PosiGen, and impacting the communities. At the end of every summer, we award a scholarship, and some of those interns that we had 3 years ago, they're now graduating, end up coming to work for PosiGen. We think that by providing opportunities for the youth and showing them that there is a way out of the cycle, we're helping communities as well. What makes us special, right? It's a couple things. One is the energy efficiency with the solar. Solar companies look at energy efficiency as cannibalizing the number of panels they can put up on the roof. Productizing solar. Solar, 89% of Americans believe in solar. 86% believe in democracy. And I guess after the Twitter campaigns, maybe even less than that. But 89% believe in it, but only 1% have it up on the roofs. Why is it? It seems like buying solar is so challenging. You don't know the price. You pay a different amount than the guy down the street did. There's all these unknowns with solar, so we wanted to make it simple. So we sell one system size. We sell it for one price. I put this system up on your house and I put it up on your friend's house, you're going to pay me the same amount. Our value proposition is simple. It's not about we're going to try to do 90% offset, or we're going to charge you this amount per kilowatt hour produced, or we're going to increase your price every year by 2.9% because we're just sure that utility prices are going to go up. No, what we do is we walk in and say, Mrs. Customer, we're going to install a 7 kilowatt system on your roof. We're going to come in and do a series of energy efficiency upgrades. Our goal is to take $120 a month off your utility bill and have you pay us $80 a month. So we're going to try and put $40 a month back in your pocket. It's not going to be $40 every month. In some months it's going to be more, some months it's going to be less. And hey, every once in a while we hit a home run and we might save you $160 or $180. Or it might be a little bit more challenging. Well, we might only save you $90, but we give you a guarantee that in your first year, you'll save more money in your reduced utility spend than you spend with us. And that's such an easy value proposition that we close on 65% of our first visits to the customer home. We only spend $1,100 to acquire a customer. Our competitors spend between $3,500 and $6,000 for every customer they get. Our design is next to nothing. We're going out and checking feasibility because we're using the exact same design we use on every home, because it's the electrical design. It's not the layout of the panels. It's the electrical design. We go in with one electrical design to the permitting office and say, this is the one we're going to use on every submission. We're just going to move around the panels mechanically. And we have most of our permitting offices, we can get a permit in either 24 to 48 hours. So we're only spending about $300 from design to permit, where our competition, because they're designing a different system on every home, different equipment, different racking, different modules, different electrical, they're spending as much as $1,500. And then we install in a very assembly-like fashion that our installation costs are around $1.50 a watt versus $2.11 is the industry average, and some as high as $2.50. So when it's all said and done, we spent about $11,000 from the time we met the customer until we finished installing it, where our competition has spent $18,000 to $21,000. So really, it's keeping that cost controlled and looking towards the future when the ITC is going to drop from 30 to 10%. We think that that is a great opportunity for PosiGen to continue to expand its footprint and to step in where other companies will fail. And when you look at the people that have exited the space in the last 18 months, the Direct, Astrum, Level, and some of the other ones, NRG, they couldn't get their costs right. Spending $6,000 or $7,000 to get a customer, spending $1,500, all those numbers never worked, so they exited the space. We're just continuing to drive our costs down so we can expand in that same space. Challenges that we faced. Well, back in 2011, we decided to bring all the solar installation and the energy efficiency in-house and have our own third-party lease instead of working with partners. When we found out we couldn't control the customer experience, we couldn't control the transaction. So we put together a great package with Novogradac and Wegman Dezet and a number of other firms, and went out to all the institutional investors and said, hey, we're going to target low-income families. We're not going to check credit, and we would like you to sign up and give us a bunch of ITC and back leverage funding. Well, needless to say, that didn't go over very well, and we had a very difficult time. So we bootstrapped it for the first couple of years. We went out and borrowed money ourselves. We eventually did get buy-in from U.S. Bank. They gave us our first tax equity fund back in 2012, September 1st of 2012, and have done a number of deals with us since then. But every time it's fighting against this, gee, it's a great story. We really want to impact these low-income families. We think that you're helping them out. We think you're doing great, but, oh, by the way, I can't get it by my credit committee. Oh, by the way, we think that you need to pay more for your money than we do for other people. And, you know, we've been able to overcome it somewhat, and we've had help from Connecticut Green Bank. Let me tell you what, if there's ever a green bank that should be a model for every other one, it's the Connecticut Green Bank. They came to us. They heard about what we were doing and said, we want you to bring the PosiGen solution to Connecticut. We want to help the low-income families in Connecticut. We want solar to be available for everybody. And in fact, that's the Connecticut tagline is solar for all. And they worked with us, and they helped us build a back leverage facility. They helped us with some loans. They helped us with some LMI, low to moderate income incentives. And that started to bring other people in. we seasoned our portfolio. You might have seen an article a couple months ago by Bloomberg Energy that shows that our default rate with no FICO score requirements and an average around 640 FICO, a lot of people with no FICO scores or FICO scores below 500 has a lower default rate than Tesla, has a lower default rate than Vivint, and very similar to Sunruns. So we're starting to prove out the model, but really it's still very difficult to get people engaged. When we go out to the market and we try and raise funds, we have a lot of people tell us that it's a great story, but they can't help us. We look to the impact investors, impact on LMI, jobs, saving the environment, really making a difference. Some of our key performance indicators. Before I do that, I would like to ask Brandon, one of our investors with the McKnight Foundation, if he could say a few words.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. My name is Brendan Slaughterback. I'm the program officer with the McKnight Foundation in the Climate and Energy Program. And we are, through our impact investing program at the foundation, happy to be the source for a loan to PosiGen. And Tom, I think this is the story you told was, I don't think I've heard it directly from you before, and it's even more compelling, I think, than what we heard through our committee, our investment committee. So, for McKnight, we're focused on making the Midwest a leader in addressing climate change, but our investment portfolio is really nationwide in scope. And I think the mission of PosiGen is really well aligned with our theory through our grant-making program that everyone really needs to benefit from the clean energy transition. And we need to build really a broad base of support for that transition from all corners of society. And so I think, again, we're happy to be partners and investees, and looking forward to seeing this model grow and expand to other states.
Thanks, Brendan. We had a quick question for you in terms of the landscape that you had seen as McKnight was looking at PosiGen. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I was asking about, as you were starting to look at PosiGen at the McKnight Foundation, what did that landscape look like? Has it evolved since then? What are some of the trends and opportunities that you've seen there?
Sure. Yeah, I think, a lot of from my perspective, a lot of the challenges that Tom has described around making solar work for low-income households are still present, and they're, I don't think they've been really well addressed in a lot of places. A little bit more to some extent on the energy efficiency side, but still largely limited to weatherization programs and utility programs that probably in most places underspend for low-income households. So I think we are also looking at, when we're looking around the landscape, a lot of solutions, folks trying to look at the community solar structure. I think, again, there's a few examples of folks making that work in the low-income space, but not a lot. And so I think that, hopefully this answers your question, the sort of unique combination of the low-income aspect and as well as the combined solar and energy efficiency was really a compelling story for our investment committee and our board about PosiGen.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Brandon. And I wanted to encourage anybody else who might have questions, if you are joining us through the WebEx platform, please feel free to put them in the chat. You will see a chat link up at the top. If you are calling in from the phone, I might try to unmute everyone in a little bit, and hopefully it won't be a disaster, and you'll have a chance to speak up then. Or feel free to reach out by email, andrea@transformfinance.org, if you want to email me your question while you're on the phone. Tom, back to you. Thank you. Thanks,
okay.
Brendan.
And look, really, that's what it boils down to, right? It's about funding. If we had the capital, we could be in 5, 6 states. We could, impact that many more families. The problem is just raising the capital. Excuse me. When you look at our key performance indicators, you would think the capital raising would be easy. I mean, we've been EBITDA positive since July of 2015. Every solar install that we do, we're cash flow positive, where our competitors are not. At 185 to 190 installations, our entire company is cash flow positive. And then you look at the impact of what we do. I mean, 73% of our customers are either LMI qualified through some program through the state or live in LMI census tracts. So we're impacting the families that do need it. We have a low default rate. If you were to take away the FICO score component of what we do, we would look at it as one of the healthiest solar companies out there, especially for one that's fully vertically integrated, carrying our own lease portfolio. And we have to finance our lease portfolio for 12,000 customers. And people get the wrong impression of LMI. LMI stands for low to moderate income. It's an income level. It's not focusing on subprime. It's focusing on homeowners that really feel the need, are impacted the most by these savings. And people's FICO scores are artificially depressed for a lot of reasons. If you have a household income of $30,000 and you only have one credit card and it's continually maxed, well, you lose 100 points on your FICO score for having less than whatever percentage of available credit. So people that have never missed a payment can have FICO scores under 600 just because of their credit or the amount of credit that they have use of. So, I think that looking at people just in that one FICO box is not the correct way to measure where we're going to be engaged with them. And truly for us, we found it's not the credit score, it's the savings. If we're saving customers $20 a month, they're okay payers. They're okay with our service. If we're saving somebody $50 a month, they're pretty good payers. But if we're saving somebody $80 or $100 a month, we're the first people that they pay. They definitely look at us as a utility replacement, and they're out in the marketplace telling everybody about the PosiGen solution. And let me tell you, when we're not saving our customer money, when we've made a mistake, we've missed a shading on a tree, the house we weren't able to do as much energy efficiency upgrades, or we've just made some mistakes along the way, they don't want to pay us. It doesn't matter if their FICO score is 350 or 850, because we're not delivering on our promise. We're not getting to them. And the majority of problems that we see is we're not saving enough money, or we couldn't get it done quickly enough. But outside of that, the majority of our customers are extremely pleased with what we do. Milestones achieved. I'm not going to spend much time on this. You can see that we've been installing at or above 2,000 systems every year. We're working on getting funding to be able to expand our footprint and be able to take that forward. We think that this coming year, it's very reasonable for us to get to about 2,500 installs, and we want to go well over 3,000 installs the year after that. And again, that's going to be based on funding and continuing to increase our financial partnerships with the people that have supported us up until now. Leadership, our team is a team that's committed not to coming to work and getting a paycheck, but really to the mission and how we drive it and how we impact the people. And everyone on our senior executive team is here because of that. People have come from much more successful companies, at least dollar-wise, to come to work for us because they really have a passion for what we do. We've got a great team. I'm humbled every day to be able to lead our group of people. Company locations, we are in Louisiana and Connecticut. We're based out of New Orleans. That's our corporate headquarters. Most of our office in Connecticut are in the Bridgeport area. We service part of New York out of there. We also have a solar thermal operation over in Lakeland, Florida, solar hot water heaters that we do with a utility company over there. Next expansion is going to be into New Jersey, and then from there we're looking at Illinois, North Carolina, and a couple other places. So we're being very strategic about where we go next. This page is not a look at how great we are. It's really to talk about, we've got 12,000 installations. We've got $120 million of nominal value of a lease portfolio. We've serviced all these customers. In 2016, we were the 1,600 fastest growing company. In 2015, we were number 57 on the Inc. 5000. We've gotten all these awards and accolades, and yet very few people have heard about us. Telling stories about the solar company that focuses on low-income homeowners hasn't been in vogue lately, so we've flown under the radar a pretty significant amount of time. Finally, why we do what we do, I wanted to finish with one last video, so if Andre can put up this last video, I think it's very powerful. It's one of our customers talking about the impact that we've had on his family. Lasts about a minute. Hope you enjoy it.
My name is Kevin Harris, and I'm at my home, and we're here to talk about pure positive energy. My sister-in-laws, my wife's sister-in-law, everybody asks, well, where did you get that? How did you do this? What process you went through? In my opinion, I'm ecstatic. They take their time, they screen their employees very well, they make it feel like a family-oriented business, and they caulk the house, they sealed the house, they built a box for my attic so the air couldn't escape in the attic. They caulked around the toilets. They needed to give me a new thermostat. My wife heard about it on the commercial. Then she came to me and said, babe, I think this would be a good idea. I think we made a good, positive decision, and in the long run, it's going to work out for us. The savings that I'm saving on my energy is my vacation money. My wife can go shopping a little bit more. We can go and do a little other things. I can do a little bit more things around the house. I can help my daughter out when she needs to. It almost helps you get financial free. And also it helps our city, our climate. Everything is trying to go green in order to try to help our atmosphere, our planet, so we won't destroy it as much as it's getting destroyed. PosiGen means pure positive energy.
With that, I'd like to take any questions that anybody has, and I'm more than happy to chat a little bit more about our business. If you'd like, please click on the chat box in the upper right-hand corner, type in your question, and I'll be more than happy to answer it.
Thank you very much, Tom. And here's their contact information, tom@posigen.com, and Mike Norton is VP Finance, mnorton@posigen.com. I'm sure they would love to hear from you. We do have a couple of questions coming in through the chat here. One of them from Nick Flores at Caprock, who was asking whether you have stress tested the loan portfolio and how you're looking at what the performance would look like in the event of a market downturn.
So that's an interesting question that we get from people looking at our back leverage facility. Utility bills are the first bill that's paid by utility customers, and we've seen even with people that become unemployed and had financial difficulties that have called in through our customer service, is that they're working to pay us first because we do look like a utility replacement to them. So it wouldn't be like somebody went in and bought a big screen on an installment payment agreement and they're willing to have it repossessed. People don't want to have their solar panels turned off. And the interesting thing about our program is that we have to build that into the program, right? Because we are dealing with low-income homeowners, and people lose their homes on occasion. People do have things that happen that don't allow them to pay. So after 3 months, if a customer is unable to pay us for 3 months, we turn off their solar system. We give them 3 months to make payment arrangements, and we're very flexible, and we work with people because we understand if there's been a death in the family or that they've changed jobs or something that's been impactful, what happens. But after those 3 months, if they can't do a payment program, we remove the system and we redeploy it. Now, most companies can't do that because if they sell a system to this gentleman over here, he wants 34 LG panels with a Power One inverter, and then they sell to this family over here, and they want Hyundai panels, and they want black railing, and they want a Solar Edge inverter. And so they're all custom systems. So none of our competitors remove systems, and the ones that do, they sell them at a very discounted rate to their employees. We redeploy them on the next customer's house. So when you look at 6 years of seasoning our lease portfolio, we're averaging about 0.43% default rate a year, but our cumulative default rate after 6 years is only 0.71. And that's because we're able to redeploy those systems. So they will go out of service for a number of months, but then they become revenue-producing systems again. So even when you look at a Sunrun or a Tesla or a Vivint, after 10 years, at a 0.3 or 0.4% default rate, they still have 3, 4, 5% of their systems that are no longer revenue producing. After 10 years, we'll have less than 1%. So I think that speaks very highly of our lease portfolio. But having good numbers on do LMI people default on their solar leases in an economic downturn, there's no data available because we're the first for-profit company to focus on this this segment.
Thanks, Tom. And Nick, please feel free to chime back in if you'd like to. Meanwhile, one question from Barb Jacobs on whether there are any state policies or laws that have limited the markets that PosiGen can or wants to work in. And she references, for example, that Minnesota has really high soft costs.
That's a great question. Soft costs are killer, especially when we go to close an ITC fund or a back leverage fund, and they start looking at all the guardrails they want to put around the fact that we don't check credit, or when do we check credit, and what is too high of a default rate, and getting people comfortable with that. I've seen transactions cost us just on the lenders or the ITC partners side alone $350,000, $400,000 in legal fees. I look at that and think, how many more customers could I have helped with that? We don't see a lot of state regulations that keep us from servicing customers, and in fact, what we're seeing more and more is programs focused on the LMI customer. And I go back to Connecticut Green Bank, and I know I mentioned them earlier. They set up a very specific program that said, look, if you're going to help an LMI customer, we're going to income qualify them. You're going to have to show savings. You're going to have to do the energy efficiency work. It's got to be a holistic solution, but in return, we'll give a higher incentive for companies that are servicing that portion of the community. That's helped us in our deployment up in Connecticut. We've seen some other programs. I think there's one in Illinois, a couple other programs that are going on right now. Philadelphia is talking to us about a pilot program. We're starting to get more visibility and starting to engage in a lot more of those conversations about how do we take some of the money and maybe true up the fact that we haven't been servicing this community and all these dollars have been going into the more affluent communities up until now.
Great. Thanks, Tom. And thank you, Barb. One question from Blake Jones, founder of Namaste Solar. Blake is asking whether any of PosiGen's installed PV systems are owned by the customer, or are they all third-party owned systems?
The majority of all of our systems are third-party owned systems. Over the period of time, we focus on marketing to the low to moderate income communities. We spend a lot of time doing community development, working with churches, other groups. We don't turn anyone away. So we do have customers that write us a check for their solar systems. We do have a solar loan product that's available, but cash sales and solar loans probably account for less than 3% of our business.
Great, thank you. So let's try now this experiment of unmuting everyone, and then I will remute everyone. Blake just saved me from that experiment by asking, when are you next raising money?
Yeah, we're a residential solar company, so we're raising money all the time. We currently have a convertible note open that we're working on raising right now. We are always looking to engage with more ITC partners. So, we've done a number of deals with U.S. Bank and Capital One and GAF and some of the larger tax equity players. And as tax equity becomes a little bit more scarce, we've worked with some other groups as well. So tax equity, convertible notes, debt products, we are currently in the market for all.
Am I unmuted, Andrea? Can I?
Yep.
Along the lines of Nick's question earlier about the loan or the lease portfolio, how do you see kind of the path towards the bankability and a lower cost of capital and kind of normalization of this as an asset class, right? In terms of scale, in terms of performance and seasoning of the portfolio, like where do we what's the path to getting this down to the cost of capital that some of the other lease providers out there can access?
That's a great question there, and we look at all of our buckets of money the same way. One of our first deals on financing the incentives for low-income homeowners was basically 36% interest rate, and we've closed 5 deals since then, and now we're LIBOR plus 450 on that particular portion of our business. And it was because we kept proving out the model. With the lease portfolio, it takes people a lot longer to get comfortable with it. We've got a lease portfolio with 6 years of seasoning. We're just now starting to get institutional investors, banks looking at saying, well, maybe this is, how do we hedge against it, but it seems like it's a good product. We've got 12,000 leases. We've got 6 years of collection history. We've got 6 years of performance. And they're telling us, yeah, but, you need 10 years. You need to have 20,000 or 25,000. And when you get there, then you can start to take a look at a securitization. They say the analyst in the end will forget about FICO scores, will forget about income levels if you can prove out a seasoning of 10, 15 years with 25, 30,000 leases. So we're just, we're a number of years away from it. So it has been getting people involved. And also, there's a benefit to it. So banks that loan to us can get CRA credits. Banks that do ITC funds can get CRA credits. And so we've really focused on the impact and the CRA aspect to get there. But we're still a number of years away. I think that we're going to struggle to get to scale to where we want to be until we have that seasoning.
Thanks, Tom. On the investor side, among the impact investors, what would you say is the part that has most attracted them to your work thus far? Is it the workers and just transition piece? Is it the solar for lower income communities?
Yeah, it's split. It's about half jobs. People come in and really tour the facilities and get to meet the team members and talk to them a little bit. We hired a lady who was homeless. Her and her daughter. You talk about homeless and you automatically think the person living on the sidewalk. There's this very large group of the unseen homeless that are living with friends or family, and she had lost her job and she lost her apartment, and she and her daughter were living with friends and family and never staying anywhere for a month, and she came to work for us, and she's done a fantastic job, and she's been promoted twice, and we were very excited when she got back into her own apartment and was able to buy a car again, and so that's very impactful. We're giving people opportunities. On the other hand, we've had a lot of investors come down, tour the neighborhoods that we're installing solar on, talk to our customers, and we are making a difference in people's lives, and you get a visceral reaction when you have somebody light up and talk about the fact that they finally have some money to be able to do this. They finally feel like they've got a little bit of control or energy independence. And those are the two big driving factors for us. I mean, every solar company impacts the environment. We impact it more because we do the energy efficiency work. But the jobs and the communities we service, I think, are the big drivers for the impact investors that have signed up for and have been our partners.
Great. And if any of the impact investors that are on the line and they have looked at the space want to chime in with their views as well, by all means, feel free to do so. Take the moderator prerogative to ask you one more question that is a little bit more off or out there. As we've looked at this intersection of just transition, the renewable energy piece and the jobs piece, the role of unions seems to have been a little bit all over the place in terms of supporting or opposing a lot of the just transition initiatives that are out there. In the specific context where you work, has there been support on the part of the unions? Is it something that you're looking at, or is it just not an issue on your side?
It hasn't been an issue for us. I mean, our crews are very small, so it's not like we're doing large utility scale jobs that would probably require union members to participate. So we haven't really engaged either positively or negatively with unions up to this point. We'll see as we move into New Jersey. I hear there's a couple more unions in Jersey than there are in Louisiana.
Great, thank you. And a question from Kay Palmer-Dunning. Since customers are leasing systems that are standardized, do they have access to NEM and selling the electricity back to the grid?
So, in most of the states, you don't get a check back, but you are able to roll over your unused credits towards the next month. So right now in Connecticut, we have full retail net metering. In New York, we have full retail net metering. That means that when you're buying solar or you're buying energy off the grid and you're selling energy back to the grid when you're overproducing, you're paying the same price and you're getting the same price. So if it's 15 cents from the utility, it's a 15-cent credit when you send it back. And that's full retail net metering. In Louisiana, we have a hybrid. The instantaneous movement of power from the grid to the house or from the house back to the grid is credited at full retail. Unfortunately, at the end of the month in Louisiana, if there's an overage, let's say they had a great May, which one of the shoulder months were producing a lot, instead of rolling that over as a full credit at retail, they reduce it down to avoided cost and they don't credit the transmission cost. So literally in Louisiana, you may sell or buy the power off the grid for 11.5 or 12 cents, and you're selling it immediately back, but whatever is left over at the end of the month, you only get credited for around 4.5 cents. And my numbers might be a little bit off, but it's pretty close to that. So they're not getting the ability to keep carrying that forward into months when they need it at the retail cost. They're only getting the avoided cost. And we're going back and trying to fight that battle right now. We think that the impact of solar is extremely positive, especially at the very low penetration rates that most states have right now.
Great, thank you. Anair, any closing thoughts here, or going back to any of the questions if you wanted to add on, especially in terms of what attracted you to PosiGen, or Tom, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, no, not for me. I think, I already kind of offered our context and how, why we see this as a unique model. And I think somewhat, I'm always a little bit surprised that when I mention it to many of our peers who care about energy access, care about kind of the just transition framework and democratizing access to solar, that more often than not, the reaction I get is, "Who? No, I haven't heard of them." And I do feel like the story has been undertold to some extent, and that it is a pretty unique approach, and has taken real kind of creativity to redesign, rethink the process by which solar is sold, installed, financed, rather than just kind of taking the boilerplate approach that others have.
Thank you. Well, with that, I want to thank everyone that joined today. The information for Tom and his colleagues was shared. I encourage you to follow up with them and ask questions or get engaged with the great work that they have been doing. So thank you, Tom and Anair, for making the time to be on this webinar today with us. And for those on the line, thank you to our members, and for others, if you're interested in joining the network or if you'd like more information, please reach out to us, transformfinance.org, or you can write me or Kurt at transformfinance.org. So thank you very much, everyone, and congratulations, Tom, to you and your team for all the fantastic work that you're doing.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.